not to be a troublemaker, so I'm going to make him a speaker. Go on, Brenton.
Oh, yeah.
So I always get Ben and Brenton mixed up because they sound. Brenton's about a half an octave below Ben. That's how I can distinguish them.
Oh, nice,
Brennan,
nice.
are you able to speak?
Hello, how are you?
Good evening.
I see Tristan there. I was going to say you're a very brave man, Tristan. So fair play to you. Can I ask a supplementary question? Why are you against devolution?
I would also like to know.
Personally, I think us as the Isles should stay fully united, and I think only cooperation is the only logical way forwards.
Yeah, but why? I mean, give us a bit of meat there. You know, what's your thought process that leads you to conclude this?
Well, I can't see what would be wrong with us working and cooperating with the English, Scots, and Welsh. And if we can actually unite the economy and unite the parliaments.
But we already sort of do that, don't we?
Yeah, I was actually going to say, like, I have quite a sort of global outlook. I want unity. I love the idea of unity in these Isles, but I don't really know that. And again, maybe I could be convinced otherwise, but I just, sorry, I don't know. I mean, there is a lot of cooperation. There is freedom of movement. There is a lot of economic, and the other thing as well, like local needs of like individual, like Scotland, for example. I think devolution very much serves as a positive there. And actually, without devolution, you could maybe see them wanting to leave the union even faster. I don't know.
For me, we're still not really getting to the major thing here. I mean, I understand in more cooperation, and any reasonable person would agree. You know, cooperation and looking after things of mutual concern is great. But I mean, are you arguing that devolution is an impediment to that? Because, like, if you're going to argue that, you're against. I mean, devolution happens within countries as well. Like within the UK, you've got county councils and parish councils in England that deal with local matters. So, in what sense is having layers of government within the same country an impediment? I mean, I'm not trying to you know, run you down for your opinions, but I would really like to just sort of understand where you're coming from, you know.
And also very quickly, like, I don't know this, you know, Tristan's idea. I don't know if it would be sustainable without devolution. If there was like centralized, like Westminster rule or Dublin rule, people are not going to be very happy about that quite quickly, I would think.
Tristan has just dropped out temporarily. His Wi-Fi is giving him chip. He'll be back.
Damn. No, this is already really interesting. I'm enjoying this.
I mean, it's tempting and it's common enough for people. I mean, there's people in Northern Ireland would say devolution is stupid. Let's just get rid of it.
Mm-hmm.
And people who would be relatively centrist or not particularly extreme in their views, they just say, stupid politicians arguing about stuff. So you know, there's no point in continuing with this, but you know, it's kind of an immature perspective. I can understand why people come to that point of view, but it's kind of, well, the idea here is that you vote for better people to run it. You know, you don't just take the thing away and wait for people in Westminster to make decisions instead. The thing that I would always come back to very briefly is that it has been British government policy in Ireland that Ireland should govern itself. You know, since the end of the 1800s, really, you know, that has been the UK government's policy, and you know, they're not going to go along with anything that looks like direct rule being permanent. Even when we had direct rule in Northern Ireland, it was always intended to be temporary, and everything was all about trying to restore devolution. the UK government doesn't want to govern any part of Ireland directly, and I don't believe it ever will. And that's the conundrum you have there. When you talk about the Scottish devolution was done to try and forestall independence. It's one of these counterfactual history things to discuss whether or not it has been successful in doing that. We can't really know what the independence movement might have looked like if devolution hadn't happened in Scotland in the late 1990s. I would definitely argue that it's probably done more to keep the union together, leaving Brexit out of the picture for the moment.
Yeah,
it probably has been successful in that objective.
It makes sense that a lot of the concerns that the independence people would want is addressed by devolution. Obviously not fully, but in that sense, you would imagine that a lot of the centrist people who want, local control of certain issues, they've got it now. And, they've kept asking for more, and that's brilliant, in my opinion.
So, Tristan, I see Tristan's back there.
Oh, great.
I was hoping, Tristan, you might be able to expound on your beliefs a wee bit. I mean, I can understand being anti-devolution, but do you really believe that it's an impediment to cooperation between countries in the UK and Ireland?
Well, personally, I don't see why we shouldn't be a United Isles. While, yes, we could cooperate as an independent country with the UK, if we are going to cooperate with them anyways, I don't see why we don't just become a United Isles. The only excuses I can ever see is that, but they're English and we're Irish, which, quite frankly, I don't think is at all helpful to...
How do you explain, or how do you reconcile different voting patterns? Like Northern Ireland I don't believe, has ever elected a Tory, but the Tories are in power now. So basically, Northern Ireland Unionists are confined to the opposition, except for 2017, of course, where there was a coalition of sorts. How do you reconcile that Ireland would have any kind of representation that wouldn't be constantly in opposition?
Well, with the whole... Ireland has its own parties, and so does Northern Ireland. Within Ireland joining the UK, realistically, if Ireland was to ever join the UK, which obviously most people would say no, it's unrealistic, it would have to, most likely, even if I wouldn't want it would have to be the similar situation that Scotland has, where it has its own parties, has its own parliament, everything, which is the reality. Although it's not my personal views on it, that is how most Irish Unionists see it realistically being done.
Okay, so we're okay. So you have your own personal beliefs, and then there's the kind of realistic slant, which would be some kind of devolution. Is that correct?
Yeah. As I've said, I have my own personal beliefs that are different from the actual party itself. Sorry if that has confused anyone. As the party stands, we're just saying that we should be in the same situation as Scotland has, where Ireland should have the opportunity to join the UK and then leave the UK. I'm personally, the main issue is that I see with the Republican movement at the moment is that whenever you bring up the thing where you're like, you have to allow the Unionists to have the referendum option, even if it's not the majority, they have to be allowed the option to reverse what has happened. That's purely what the IUP is speaking for, is the option for Unionists to be able to reverse what's happened in the event of a United Ireland.
But what you're saying there is you support Irish national self-determination. which is a Republican principle. Irish Republicans would argue that if Ireland does wish to rejoin the UK and it voted in an election and won a majority to do that, then of course that should happen. You're not necessarily, promulgating a completely unique view there. Might not be one that's widely shared, but it's there.
Yeah, well,
I mean, I personally would be quite skeptical if that was like, okay, I mean, sure, if it's an ideal, like, I get it, but I don't think that's mainstream at all. I completely agree with the electorate's ability to change their mind. That's why we have elections every 4 or 5 years. I hold that opinion with Brexit. If it had went either way, if it was that close, I think, as the facts become clear, people should be allowed to vote on it. I guess on principle, I would say grand, like a referendum for Ireland to join the UK, but I mean,
I personally would have no problem with it.
Why would
I have no problem with it at all?
Oh, I mean, I've absolutely no like ideological reason to be against it. I mean, unsurprisingly, but
you're a unionist, man. Small you.
But I mean, I wouldn't. I don't mean this in a bad, or I don't mean this in a. I wouldn't personally spend my time on that, I guess. And I haven't even really. I don't know. I haven't really thought it through, I guess. But I mean, for starters, if that meant getting rid of devolution, I would be absolutely 100% against it, without a doubt. And without devolution in Northern Ireland, I would not be a unionist. I'll make that very clear. So,
can I put a related question here? Sorry, Ben, for cutting across you.
No, I'm done.
Tristan, are you in favour of Brexit?
Personally, yes. Some of the other members aren't, and some of the other members are. So,
I mean, how do you reconcile your observation about cooperation between nations with the idea that we shouldn't have close cooperation with the European Union?
It's all about representation that matters. If the EU had more representation for Ireland, then I would have 100% supported the EU. I just personally like the idea that big nations like France and Germany would have utter dominance within the EU, which is the situation.
But how would that apply with England if there was a reunified UK with Ireland within it? Would England not dominate the whole story?
People. Ireland, the whole island has like 8 million people. England has 6 million people.
How would you address that? Within the context of an expanded UK with the island of Ireland within it.
Well, Ireland within the Parliament, which I haven't personally checked out the numbers fully 100% yet, but someone had brought up a while back, Ireland could get around 15 to 20% of representation if it was to be fully united within the United Kingdom, which I, to be honest, whilst I would have wished for a slight bit more representation, if I had the Parliament whilst also being the UK, then I honestly wouldn't have much of an issue with it.
What is that based on? Because if Ireland, if the whole of Ireland joined the UK, you'd have about 7% of the population. How do you work that out?
Well, I'll have to bring up the guy, because it wasn't me who worked it out.
Maybe in like a federal system or something, but...
How many MPs did Ireland send to the UK Parliament prior to 1922? About 100, I think. Something like that.
I'm actually really interested to see, I'm doing the maths right now, but I'm interested to see if Ireland had more representation in Europe than they would in this hypothetical United Isles, because I think it might actually be quite close.
Like Ireland has certain, it doesn't have a veto, but it has things that are not far away from a veto. I don't think Ireland simply gets
Ireland's
major decisions. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's not a case of where France and Germany. I mean, Ireland. There's obviously political jockeying that goes on, and clearly, France and Germany dominate events in the EU. I mean, Tristan does have a point there. The thing is, there's other mechanisms where Ireland can veto things. Like I think there was a problem there where Belgium where there was a danger of Belgium vetoing something. It was in the news a few years ago, and people who've been around a wee bit longer might remember the issue of the European Constitution, which fell after I think there was a referendum on it in the Netherlands, which smaller country than Ireland possibly, or around about the same size. They voted that down and basically torpedoed the whole thing. It was brought back as a series of treaties instead. But you know, the idea that small voices don't have sway in Europe is not quite true. Now, if you were to try and fix this at the UK level, what you would have to say is that each member state of the UK, I mean, it would need to be a federation, something like the United States, where Ireland could veto things at a UK national level. What I can tell you, Tristan, is that English voters will simply not tolerate that. If you look into the history, I guess you probably have. But we started in a situation where we had, to call it devolution would be putting it strongly, but towards the end of the 1700s, Ireland had something like a fledgling devolved parliament. The England basically decided to abolish it. And from that point onwards, Ireland was directly governed from London, and there were constant, the problems basically began from that point. And 100 years later, you ended up with home rule being a thing. If you're going to try and reverse that, I think you need to explain how you're going to avoid the same mistakes of history being repeated again. There's like a political problem where English voters don't really see themselves as part of a wide UK project in the same way as, for example, New York or Californian voters would not necessarily see themselves as dominating the political debate and political decisions in the United States, even though they've got a large proportion of the population. So I'm all for I'm all for the idea, and it's a valid idea, but it seems a wee bit like a solution in search of a problem to me.
Just want to make clear that I'm fully understanding of the English's attitude to UK politics. I've had quite a lot of English people get rather annoyed at me for even suggesting bringing another nation into the Union.
English people getting annoyed at Ireland and its political ideas is not a new thing, and it's a wee bit of an issue with what you're proposing. Sorry.
That raises a valid point, actually. So obviously, if there's a referendum in Ireland to basically bend the constitution and say we want to be part of the UK again, the UK would have to agree to that, right?
I guess, yeah. I was going to make the point, like, any country could theoretically do this. Oh, I'm Canada, let's join the US or something, or I don't know, maybe they would say yes, but I would say in most situations, it's not just going to be as easy as winning the referendum than just joining the other country. And also, yeah, whenever you take the population of the island of Ireland and divide it by this new United Isles, we would have 7% of MPs, basically no say at all. Like, I don't understand how you could square that. Ireland has basically no say in that scenario for the majority of parliaments.
It would have to be a federal UK, where Ireland would have a veto.
It would have to be.
Just wanted to say that there is a real life comparison of how the UK has to accept another nation, even if the referendum got the majority. In Malta, they had a referendum back in the day during the 50s, which had a over 70% approval to be integrated in the UK, but then the UK said no, and they only got like, I think it was Dominion status or something like that. But
I feel like I should know that, but I didn't know that. That's really interesting.
It is. Yeah, I haven't heard that.
Have you done research, Tristan, as to the likelihood of the current UK allowing Ireland back into the Union?
Well, the whole point of the Irish Unionist Party, and I just want to make it clear that the views that I have are not going to be the permanent views of the party, because the party is literally just a bare bones thing set up so that in the case of United Ireland, the Unionist people still have a voice. I remember I proposed the question to one of the people on the Ireland's Future events, and he basically skipped around it, and he just basically said that there won't be a Unionist Party and that they'll just have to join other parties, which I thought was rather outrageous. But
no, that's not the case.
You know,
Ireland's Future are, fairly close to the thinking of another political party in Ireland. I wouldn't be particularly surprised at them given that point of view.
PVP or so into or something. No?
The thing I would say is they don't know what will happen in a future United Ireland. Nobody does. Nobody can say. I find it struggle. I struggle to believe that unionism would be a major force, or like the political ideal of being part of the UK would be a major force in a post-reunification Ireland. You would still have unionism representing the same people that it does, but it would be a post-independence type of a thing.
Yeah, but think, Tristan, that your movement might actually make United Ireland more likely.
Well, the question is how the Republican movements and how the Republic responds to it. That's the real question. This is all, it just depends on how the Republic actually responds to it. If it just
the reason I say that is I've been tagging you in loads of Twitter threads where unions say we would have unionism doesn't exist in the South, and now you're a good example of that it does. So that kind of you're now kind of scapegoat for that question.
It's not official yet, and I want to make that very clear because a lot of people have been calling us a party, which, to be fair, I know I shouldn't be really referring to it as a party just yet. It's more of just an idea and a movement. It just depends. If we get official and everything, then very well so we could be used as a perfect excuse that maybe unionism can survive within a republic, which, to be honest, I think would quell a lot of unionist fears. But then, vice versa, you have Republicans who have openly said to us, especially with the gun threat, where they said if we try canvassing there, then, he would threaten us with his gun. But,
that actually happened.
Yeah, it's in the article. It shows the picture. There was another guy who said they'd be keeping an eye out for me in Limerick. Which, and it hasn't just been Republicans threatening me. Just the way that you have said that, we could make a very good point that unionism could survive in a republic. At the moment, I live up in the north due to certain things happening.
I'm sorry to hear that.
And now the unionists up here, especially like hardcore UDA TV voters, they've personally threatened me now because they're like, this guy could make actually the Republic not seem so bad. So it's more just...
that's back to my point earlier. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah.
I mean, I'm going to be honest, like, for the sorts of people that are concerned by that, I just don't see them being convinced by, like, I think they're pretty set in the idea of, you know, a united Ireland's going to be hostile to unionism. I actually do want to sort of defend Tristan on one thing, and actually Richard had brought this up a couple of times as well. I think Richard in one of the previous spaces had said that, you know, if there was a united Ireland, he would expect there to be at least or more referendums, I guess, to see if people change their mind. And I am actually completely fine with that. I really am. In, you know, in both scenarios, you know, if there's a referendum tomorrow to say we're staying, if, you know, if there's any change, I'd like to see it voted on again. But Richard actually did get quite a hostile response to that. There were at least 2 other people in the space that were like, nope, not happening. And I don't think that's a great attitude. It's anti-democratic. So I can understand if it's frustrating that, you know, Tristan probably gets a lot of just pushback without any like thought going into it. It's just, sorry, I'm looking for the word. Just, I don't know.
It's absolutely disgraceful. There's no reasonable person would support that.
I would
assume the threats and things like that is completely out of order. And it's Tristan. Realistically, you're not a threat to anybody. And I imagine, I don't want to downplay threats on social media or whatever, because it's serious enough when you receive them. But we're probably talking about keyboard warriors here. You know, I would try not to be too worried about that, but that's easy for me to say, you know. But it's completely wrong that you're getting that kind of treatment.
Well, to be honest, you're right. You shouldn't show them that you're at all worried about it, because at the end of the day, that's what gives them the power, isn't it?
I guess, yeah.
Unfortunately, it's the reality of this screwed up place. Type of thing goes on.
I'm actually very surprised that there is pushback from a lot of the sort of more hardline unionists, because, I mean, certainly in jest, it is all, like, I often see it said, oh, Ireland should just join the UK. Like, I would have thought that would be Jim Allister's wet dream. Like, really? Like, so I'm not really sure why he's all, or, well, not that Jim Allister's personally threatening Tristan, but I don't think it's a very well thought out position from a lot of unionists. Surely
I don't think this occupies the minds of unionism to any great extent.
That too.
It's really not a thing, you know.
Yeah.
It's not something they would devote. If I was a unionist, I wouldn't be devoting any time to thinking about this. And I think the unionist political parties here, and again, I don't want to misquote anybody, but when there was some controversy when the then DUP leader, Arlene Foster, said that if there was a United Ireland, she would leave, there was quite a bit of pushback from other unionist elected representatives saying, no, I wouldn't leave. They seem to basically suggest, yeah, you'd lose, but you'd have to try and make the best of it. I imagine most of unionism sees a united. Well, if that referendum gets lost, that's really the end of the whole thing. Now, that's not to say there won't be people who resist it, and there'll be people who'll violently resist it. But I don't really see, once it's all over and done with, unionism being able to make a serious case for the return to the fold. And I don't say that to put you down, Tristan, but you know, realistically.
Just are saying I have to quickly go for 1 minute. I have to help my father or something.
Sure.
BRB, sorry.
Might be a good time to Brian, trying to say something. Obviously, you can wait till Tristan comes back if you need to directly address Tristan.
Also, just wanted to mention, I am having some technical, I don't know, just on phone, it kicks me like every 20 minutes or so, and it's really weird, but...
Does the app like completely die?
Yeah, it goes black, like the screen goes black for like 3 seconds and then it just kicks me back to Twitter. But whenever it used to happen, it wouldn't even like let me get back on the space. And then whenever it did, it was like totally glitched out and still thought I was like co-host whenever I couldn't even speak. I don't know.
I think there's a few bugs just with this little spaces thing. I presume they're still ironing out. I've been kicked off a few times as well. Even when it's an event that you started and you're hosting. It's weird.
God, that sounds awful. Also, welcome Ian. Good to see you. Patrick, Brian.
Evening.
Hello, how you doing? Would anybody mind if I make a contribution to this debate?
I thought you were going to say make a coffee or something. I was like, no, go ahead. No.
Absolutely not, Brian. Not acceptable.
So, I mean, first of all, it's so it's really easy to just like write this off as a bit like crackpot on the basis that like very few numbers of people outside of the Unionist tradition would ever think to vote for this, either in United Ireland or today. But there's other like really big issues that are raised by this debate that are actually like 100% relevant and that we need to consider, which is, let's say in the next sort of 5 to 10 years, there's a referendum and there's a majority for United Ireland. Doesn't matter what size that majority is. So let's say the island is united in some way, has a new constitution. Pretty much everybody agrees that there's going to have to be some kind of new shared citizenship arrangement. So like everybody basically said, I mean, Sinn Féin are saying it even, they're saying, look, people need to be able to keep their British citizenship. And then there's a question of, well, does that just apply to people born in, South Armagh, or does it include Monaghan? Is it people in Derry or Donegal? And then we also have to figure out, like, what's the trade relationship going to be? And we may even be in a situation there where we have, this is real wild card, but we could end up in a situation sometime in the next generation when you have even Scotland independent out of the European Union. Who knows, right? So we're going to have to reconfigure all of our citizenship and trade arrangements anyway, right? So there's actually like a really big question to be had here, and nobody in the right mind is going to say that we should be putting up more barriers. We've seen what the debate over the Northern Ireland Protocol has done, and it's actually had minimum impact. So you can imagine where if there were real divisions in trade between the two islands, what a bad idea that would be. And so this idea of like, we might not ever get to a situation where the islands are united, but we're going to have some kind of new arrangement that either inside of or outside of Europe that really takes into consideration the fact that we need shared citizenship and we need, regulated but relatively, friction-free trade between the two islands. And I think that's probably where this debate ought to really be going.
I mean, certainly if for example, Unionists or anyone from here being able to keep their British citizenship, if that's like a mainstream Sinn Féin position, they should probably talk about it more, because I don't think there are really any Unionists who are aware of that, if that's the case. I mean, I assume it probably is the party's position, but I haven't heard anything from that. Not that I've been listening out for it, I guess, but
I don't know if it's in a policy position, but Mary Lou McDonald said it in a debate with Leo Varadkar. She agreed that would be like. In fact, she did it twice. It was
interesting. I wonder if that was more just in like Southern politics, kind of.
Yeah, I think
I believe
it was an acknowledgement of principle.
I would believe it. Yeah, yeah. I would believe that Sinn Féin would actively acknowledge that idea, and I'm not a defender of Sinn Féin. The wider problem there is that it's quite hard to get nationalism in general and Sinn Féin in particular to go into detail about how things like Brian just mentioned are going to be addressed in a future United Ireland. And that's part of the whole problem here, and certainly in my opinion. But I think you're absolutely right, Brian, everything that you said. The whole thing needs to be just completely reconfigured and redesigned in the event of a border poll passing.
Yeah, there's very little I disagreed with what Brian said as well.
I'm back, by the way.
Oh, welcome back.
We just solved all the issues while you were away, Tristan.
Sorry about that.
Fantastic.
Yeah, you can disband now, actually.
All right, that's great. Thank you.
I actually just want to say very small non-sequitur. Well, it's not too much of a non-sequitur, but Tristan, I do think it's pretty cool that you're trying to set up a party from the ground. It's not easy. So just based on that alone.
Thank you. Yeah.
I think we just lost Ben momentarily again. Did we?
He was talking about technical problems there. I don't see him.
Yeah. If you had developed that app, Brendan, it'd be a lot better, wouldn't it?
I don't think so.
So let's bring Patrick in. So Patrick's a Tory that's based in England that likes to contribute. Patrick, do you want to say with what's going on so far?
I'm just listening for the minute. Sorry. Yeah, I've also got some technical issues.
Okay, fine. So Tristan, what's your plan for the party or the movement? When are you going to register it as a party, and when are you going to have like a handbook, party manifesto, things like that? Did we lose Tristan again? Oh, Tristan's gone. Brilliant. Oh, he's back. Hey, back, Tristan. Oh, these are great, aren't they? Tristan, do we have you? Okay, who do we have? Is Ian able to speak? Oh, Gareth. Okay, let's make Gareth the speaker.
There.